us on Facebook at Daunta Alone. Follow us on Instagram at Daunta Long. Follow us on YouTube at Daunta Alone. Thank you for tuning in to Long Talk.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in to Long Talk. We're here again on this evening and present with you on this Thursday. And just so happy for another opportunity that each time we come together, we can have relevant dialogue and meaningful conversation. And we're so privileged tonight to have yet another opportunity. So tonight, please, if this is your very first time watching or you're a returning guest and you have not already done so, I'm going to ask you if you would, please stay connected to Long Talk with yours truly. And I would that you would take just a moment to become engaged and become connected with us by going to Facebook and making sure that you follow and that you like and that you hit that button that will allow you to be notified each time that we go live. And if you're on YouTube watching tonight, please go ahead and subscribe and also hit that notification bell so that you can be made aware of each time that we go live with Long Talk, because there is meaningful dialogue that is created for the entire family so that your life can be improved. And so tonight we're so thankful to have this opportunity. Well, on this evening, we've got a very, very special guest. Several years ago, our paths crossed when it was a most unfortunate time in my life. And our guest tonight really allowed the unfortunate series of events that transpired in my life. She helped allow that message to spread and get out to a much larger audience. And I will forever be grateful for our guest tonight. Friends, she is a civic leader in the DeKalb and Gwinnett County areas. She is the representative for District 94. Tonight, friends, please help me welcome our guest, Representative Karen Bennett. Good evening, good evening, good evening.
Good evening, Daunta.
How are you this evening?
I am so blessed and thrilled to be here with you, I should say, Reverend Long, on the Long Talk. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Again, thank you so much for coming on and just being a part of our dialogue. Trust all has been going well for you.
All is well. I won't complain.
Great, 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 great. Well, listen, I just want to take this opportunity to allow individuals to get to know you, so because there may be many people that are watching tonight, of course, that are not inside of District 94 that may not know exactly who you are. So would you take just a moment and greet our listening audience on this evening?
Well, good evening, and thank you again, Reverend Long, for having me. I would be remiss if I didn't give God glory for being here this evening and being here with you, such a fine young man. I am Reverend Dr. Karen L. Bennett, have served in the Georgia House of Representatives for 4 terms, finishing up my 8th year, and the citizens of this great House district have thought it necessary to send me back. So in January, God willing, I will be back again. Now, I could tell you a list of things about me. Currently, I serve as the chairwoman of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, which is one of the premier organizations, but it is comprised of about 65 members in both the House and the Senate. And we claim that we are the largest Black caucus of its kind, and we are the most impactful. So what else would you like for me to say?
Oh, my goodness. It's just so wonderful that you have been able to serve the fine citizens in District 94 and do so much to improve the quality of life, as you have been on the House floor lobbying for their interest. so much that many can see and read about you, and then also what you do in the religious community, serving as the senior pastor in the 6th district of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And so I don't know how in the world do you get a chance to balance all that you do with, and on top of that, I'm sure you're a mother, a grandmother, and all that you do in your home life. But the reason why I wanted to bring you on tonight is to talk about something that you have done. And I want to show a quick video before we get into that. So if we will, just take a minute. I want our listening audience tonight just to see exactly what you have done before we pick up tonight's dialogue.
Hi, I'm Karen Bennett. I'm the state representative for House District 94, representing parts of DeKalb and Gwinnett County. Hi, I'm Karen Bennett. I'm the state representative for House District 94, representing parts of DeKalb and Gwinnett County. It is my delight to come to you today to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, as well as near and dear to the hearts of others in Georgia, and that is hate crime. There are people in this country and in this state that would wage war against one person because of their innate discriminations against people based on their differences. I say this is wrong, which is why I sponsored House Bill 663 during the last legislative session. To perpetrate a crime against someone because you dislike them based on whatever reason, that's wrong. Georgia, we're better than that. And I ask for your vote to send me back to the State House of Representatives so that in the upcoming legislative session, I will reintroduce hate crime legislation.
Hi, my name is Daunta Long, and I am the senior pastor of the Seed Planters Church McDonough in McDonough, Georgia. Literally a month ago, we discovered that our church had been vandalized. I discovered that many images that were plastered on our wall were racially divisive images that spoke to hate, that spoke to division, and that spoke to civil unrest. The unfortunate thing is that when those individuals were charged with this crime, they were only charged with a few misdemeanors because, unfortunately, the state of Georgia does not have any legislation on the books that speak to hate crimes.
I am Karen Bennett, and I ask for your vote to send me back to the Georgia State House of Representatives so that I can keep fighting for you, fighting for things that matter.
Wonderful, wonderful. I wanted to show that clip to our viewing audience because many would wonder why I have decided to bring you on tonight, and that's because for years now you have been an individual fighting for legislation against hate crimes in the state of Georgia. And let me ask you, why have you taken that active position to really forge the fight against racism and the brutal effects of racism here in the state of Georgia?
It's a great question. Let me start by giving my bishop, Bishop Reginald T. Jackson, his accolades for when he first came to Georgia. He brought that to the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, that we were one of 5 states at that time that did not have hate crime legislation on the books. And so the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus took that up as one of our agenda items. It was the largest agenda item, and we just continued to stick to the fight. So 663 ended in the end of 2018. As you know, every 2 years the term ends. And so when we began in 2019, Representative Chuck F.S. Stration took up House Bill 426, which was literally House Bill 663. And he championed that and got that passed. And we all fought and worked and lobbied for it, and we got it passed in the House of Representatives back in March of 2019.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I wanted to ask you, you sort of alluded to that. Were you happy to see that even though the original legislation with its ID number was not passed, just to see that legislation for hate crimes in the state of Georgia had actually been passed?
Yes, I was. And Reverend Long, I'm sure you know that we can get a lot of things done as long as it doesn't matter whose name is on it. And so the Georgia legislature, I am in, is a political arena.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more important to me that we put people before politics and we continue to fight. I am the third signer on the hate crime bill, House Bill 426, that was passed. And I'm happy to say that it was signed by the governor into law on last Friday.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I will ask you this critical question. As you just did a very eloquent job saying, it does not matter who gets the credit as long as the results that are needed are granted. Were there any revisions or additions to the original legislation that that you're aware of that were maybe slightly different than what your original legislation was?
That's a great question. And as many of you know, COVID-19 happened and the Georgia General Assembly was suspended for practically 3 months. And
Mm-hmm.
we went back into the House on June the 15th, and that was prime in our agenda to make sure that that legislation was passed. And so it was a fast and furious 2 weeks. There was a lot of negotiations. I have to give my hats off to the Senate Minority Whip, Senator Harold Jones. I have to
Mm-hmm.
give my hats off to the Dean of the House, Dean Calvin Smiley, and to the House Minority Whip, who together as a team, we fought and fought to get this bill across the line. So your question is, did it deliver in its original form? It delivered in its original form with the exception of one positive addition to it, and that is that we have data management, data collection in House Bill 426. That was an add-on that was put in by the Senate, and then we're proud to know that overwhelmingly the Senate approved House Bill 426, a historic piece of legislation.
Absolutely. You just raised up something that most of us, including myself, are not really privy to understand what you mean. What do you mean by data collection?
That means that whenever a crime or offense is committed and it is prosecuted as a hate crime, certain pieces of data must be kept in the GBI so that Georgia can begin to track the specific classes that this crime is perpetrated against, and we could specifically track the outcomes of the prosecution of this legislation.
Wow, wow, wow.
Which
Phenomenal
currently,
information. Look,
which currently we don't have that. And so one of the arguments was that Georgia did not have an outstanding or proliferous history of hate crimes in Georgia. But how would we know if we're not tracking it? And the only way we could track it is for it to become law. And we added that data component in there.
wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. How did you feel? How did you feel when the governor signed off on it? What was going through your mind and through your emotions to see what you had worked on for several sessions actually came to fruition?
I thought about the people, Reverend Long, and I also thought about your situation. Had we had hate crime during the time where your situation occurred, that would be part of the record. And I believe that this was justice for the Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor, and most recently, Mr. Brooks in Atlanta, simply because when House Bill 426 passed the House back in March of 2019 and went over to the Senate, and we re-entered 20 January, it was DOA. It was dead on arrival. We had lobbied for it. We had met with the governor. We had met with the lieutenant governor. We had met with the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, and they said, we don't think so. So one of my colleagues coined it as the Lazarus Bill, and I have to give credit to Representative Bodie. He said this bill was dead, and it took an act of God and the unfortunate murders of those African Americans, for people to rise up and say, we're not going to take this anymore. And so I am so humbled and appreciative to all the people who risked their lives during a period of a pandemic and got out in the streets and peacefully protested in favor of passing a hate crime bill. Now, this bill is a beginning because, as you know, it is an enhanced bill. It's a bifurcated bill, which means that first, the perpetrators have to be found guilty of the crime, the felony or the misdemeanor, and then tried as a hate crime. So it's a two-part process. However, because on the blood of those African Americans, it called attention to hatred in America. Well, hatred in America has always been present. However, it allowed people to rise up and say no more. And because of those murders that were made public through video, had it not been for the video, we might not be celebrating House Bill 426. So we celebrated in the justice of those who lost their lives. We just honor the families for their sacrifice and continue to feel the condolences and express the condolences. But it changed that their lives made a difference and made all the difference in us passing this bill in Georgia.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're just so happy to see it come to pass, because I remember back in 2018 when the unfortunate situation happened to us. I saw some pretty dark days. I got a call from the Henry County District Attorney's Office indicating that a grand jury was not going to charge the gentlemen who were responsible with a hate crime. And I said, well, why not? And they said to me, because there is no legislation on the books for a hate crime. And if that wasn't enough, the following statement was, and this talks to the bifurcation of what you just said, they chose not to even charge them with a felony. They did not charge those individuals with a felony because they said it would be extremely difficult to prove. And unfortunately, those young men who vandalized and desecrated our house of worship literally spent maybe a night, maybe 2 or 3 nights in jail. They immediately bonded out and went on with their life as though nothing ever occurred, leaving our place of worship, our house of worship, desecrated. It took thousands of dollars. It took wonderful people all over Atlanta and across the country, and that's why I'll always be thankful to you. When you ran that commercial, we got so many people to reach out to us and help and donate so that we could get it back in process. But one of the things that ran through my mind is, Representative Bennett, you don't know how many individuals called me during that time and said, my church was vandalized. My son was shot and killed. I heard so many stories of individuals that were victims of hate crime that when I was told that nothing was going to happen, it seemed like a systemic oppression that has continued for so long. And that's why I want to ask you how you felt, because when I saw it and when I was privileged enough to sit in front of the television when the breaking news broke that the governor had signed it, I thought about you. I said, with all of the pain that I've suffered, I'm so glad that an individual like Representative Karen Bennett took the time to hear the story and took it to the state floor just to lift it up and help people understand that not only the innocent blood, and my God, we will never forget. We will never forget Ahmaud Arbery. Never forget Rayshard Brooks. Never forget all of the individuals that have lost their lives. One of the things you said to me earlier today is that this didn't even start with you, that there have been individuals lobbying for this for nearly 30, 40 years. Is that true?
At least 20, yes. If we go back to the year of 2000, I believe, State Senator Vincent Fort, Nan Orrock, Representative Carla Drenner, Representative Calvin Smiley, who was in the House at that time, all of them were instrumental in passing a hate crime bill back in 2000. However, in 2004, the Supreme Court of Georgia struck it down as being unconstitutional because they deemed it as being vague without identifying the class who would be impacted by this.
Oh my goodness. I want to take a quick break and come back because I want to ask you just a few more questions. And I do want to show individuals exactly what happened so that many will say, well, what made it a hate crime? So give us about 2 minutes, 2 seconds, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Vandals strike a McDonough church, leaving satanic symbols across the sanctuary walls. Church members made the discovery Monday night when they arrived for a meeting at Seed Planters Church on Highway 81. According to police, the vandals pried open a rear door to get inside and ransack the church's sanctuary. They also drew symbols like demon heads and the number 666 on many of the walls. The senior pastor says the damage was shocking, but he'd still welcome the vandals into his church.
I certainly want to say that I forgive you. I hold no malice in my heart towards you. If there's anything that I can do to help you, then certainly I avail myself. I want to invite you to come and be a part of this community because I believe that you need help and that we can help and we can build a stronger community together.
Well, Pastor Long says the damage has also caused a setback in their preparations for Easter Sunday, but he says the church still plans to move forward with their Easter service.
Most of us.
Equality versus equity. Equality means every child gets a pair of shoes. Equity means every child gets a pair of shoes that fit. That means every school district has to meet every student's individual needs.
I'm Jerry O'Green with the Black Student Advocate. We advocate for black employees and black students within the K-12 school districts. We hold school districts accountable to make sure that black students and employees are in a fair and equitable workplace.
All right. Well, again, we're so thankful to be on with Representative Karen Bennett and hearing again what it is that you have been doing ever since you got to the House in 2013 and how you've been lobbying to help with hate crimes. Let me ask you this. With all of the hate crimes that have taken place over this long period of time, who do you believe will benefit the most from this legislation?
Well, let me just say before we go there again, we had this hate crime bill in place when your church was vandalized, criminal trespassing is now within this bill. So I would say that. The other people, they call them class. The other classes who have been discriminated against, oppressed, marginalized include the language that's in the bill is race. You cannot commit crime against someone because of their race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender, mental disability, or physical disability. So those are the different classes, and they're called classes because it's stated in the federal law that a crime committed against these groups of people because you don't like them or disagree with them, and it can be proven that these crimes against this class of people were done out of hatred for them, then that will become a hate crime record in Georgia.
Wow. Wow. So I'll ask you this final question as we draw to a close. Do you strongly believe that many of the municipalities here in the state of Georgia where this will fall on the hands of district attorneys? Not to be too optimistic, rather, but where do you believe many district attorneys what role will they play in seeing this particular legislation be most effective?
Once again, let me say this is a beginning. Criminal justice reform is a mantle that the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus takes up. They've taken it up for over 50 years. The Georgia Legislative Black Caucus stands for equity and justice. We promote policy, which is laws that promote equity and justice among African Americans, people of color, and disenfranchised communities. And we oppose just the opposite. If there are laws that promote oppression, as you know, we got voter suppression coming up. That's a big issue for us. Now, to your question, this is a beginning, and it should serve as a deterrent and a message to those who commit these types of crimes. Now, as you know, we cannot legislate morality. We cannot legislate one's heart. However, I believe that by arming our district attorneys with something that they can legally prosecute, I can only hope that in years to come that this gets better and better. This bill is a start. And from what I know, we'll come back and try to strengthen it as the next session comes, because we want to make sure that Georgia sends a strong and convincing message that Georgia is a state that's too great to hate, and Georgia is a state that protects the rights of all of our citizens. But once again, we cannot legislate morality or legislate someone's heart. However, we want to make sure that if you do the crime, you know that you have to do the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Representative Bennett, thank you so very much for taking the time to come on tonight. We really appreciate your efforts, your continued efforts. So excited and so just elated that you're going back to the House floor for another term. As you said, that this legislation was just the beginning. So I'm sure you're going to get back out on the floor and do with all due diligence what is necessary to strengthen it and build upon it so that individuals that need the justice because their rights have been violated due to their nationality, their worship, or their ethnicity, or again, their sexual orientation or whatever. And I just appreciate you being one of the leading voices to make sure that this has come to fruition. We salute you for your efforts and thank you so very much.
Might I say one thing, Reverend Long, before we leave?
Yes, ma'am.
As a companion, we cannot leave at the door. Citizens arrest, stand your ground, and no knock warrants. We will continue to fight. Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, we will continue to forge away and fight, because those are companion bills that go along with this hate crime. So I'm honored and humbled that you had me on tonight. And thank you, and continue the great work that you're doing with Long Talk.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Bless you too.
All right. Friends, we are so thankful for tonight's conversation with our beloved matriarch, Representative Karen Bennett. We're so humbled that she has been on the front lines doing this wonderful work. I want to say to somebody who's watching tonight, listen, when you become the victim of a crime, most times you feel hopeless, and most times you feel as though that the one who inflicted or caused the violation that happened to you, whether they are punished or unpunished, you still feel as though justice has not been granted. There are laws that we are ever working to put in place, but I want to let you know tonight in this long talk that you can continue to fight for justice no matter what has happened to you. And so maybe it is that you've given up because, as you heard Representative say earlier, it's been dead on arrival when you first went out and set out to seek justice, to seek to have the memory of what happened to be lifted up. And perhaps you hit a brick wall. Perhaps it is that you have not been able to get the type of traction. But as you heard her say tonight, you don't know what will happen that will spawn this thing, that will enable many other lives to be impacted positively because you continue to fight for justice. Friends, we love you. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And we'll see you again next week on Long Talk.
Follow us on Facebook at Daunta Alone. Follow us on Instagram at Daunta Long. Follow us on YouTube at Daunta Alone. Thank you for tuning in to Long Talk.